Right, so today I want to talk about this story out of the post-millennial, and I'm sure a decent amount of people have heard about it, but because it's such a big issue, I got to make a video about it. So I'm going to get right into it. Trudeau government will hike carbon tax by 50% despite coronavirus nightmare. And let's read a little bit about it, and then I'll talk about it because believe me, I need to talk about it. Justin Trudeau's government is choosing not to postpone a 50% carbon tax increase despite the ongoing economic strife of the coronavirus pandemic, according to Blacklock's reporter. The tax hike was originally created 2 years ago and scheduled to go into effect April 1st. The Liberals' Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act legislation mandates a 50% rise on the tax from 4.4 cents to 6.6. While Trudeau's Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was asked about the tax hike, she said, I think our government has been very clear that this is a time where our first priority is protecting the health and safety of Canadians, which is absolutely laughable. And that's what everyone here has been focused on. Again, that's not what they've been focused on. But anyway, we're thinking very carefully about our whole approach to what we're doing economically, and both in terms of how we're supporting workers and businesses, and also what we do or what we are doing on the tax side. She added, the carbon. Yeah. Okay. So this is absolutely insane. We're at a time when people are pretty broke. I mean, people are having a very tough time affording their bills even before this kind of stuff was going on. I've said before, I made multiple videos about how the economy was not doing well and there was going to be a recession, like I said, more than likely within the next few years, maybe sooner, maybe slightly later, but it's here. It came. I know I made a video around Christmas time, and then I've made one or two since then warning people that the economy is not doing well and a recession was coming. So, and the thing to point out too is that my economic knowledge is I'm not an expert. I mean, I know more than probably 95, 99% of people, but compared to an economist or someone like that, I'm an amateur, and I could tell beyond a shadow of a doubt that a recession was coming and soon. And this one wasn't the way that recessions usually come. This was because of the virus, but it was coming at some point. And the fact that the Trudeau government's still going to raise the carbon taxes, it's insane because people don't have any money now, and we're going to make things even more expensive. Like, it makes no sense that this whole carbon tax issue is an easy issue that you can bring up with people that agree with it to tell whether or not they have biases. Now, the overwhelming majority of them do, but the ones that'll admit it are the ones you'll be able to get. And it's a simple thought exercise that the BC government has had a carbon tax for I think 11, 12 years. The government's own numbers show that the carbon tax has only decreased emissions by I think 0.5%, which is again barely measurable, and not worth making people spend hundreds of dollars a year, maybe even thousands when you add up all the expenses, more on living, basically. Like, are you joking? Like, we're gonna have to make people spend tens of thousands of dollars a year to get even a 1%, 1 or 2% difference. Like, it makes no sense. And if like getting back to the whole thought experiment, given we know that over more than a 10-year period, we know that it doesn't work. We know that their own numbers show that they would have to quadruple it before it would even become significant. Like, the tax on fuel is going to have to go from 4.4 to probably 20, 25 cents. Like, that's where it's going to have to be to make a difference. Now, most people who have their head on straight and who actually pay attention to this kind of stuff have noticed that the cost of food's gone up very significantly in the last, I mean, basically since the carbon taxes came in. Inflation is borderline getting out of, I would say it is, but it's only getting worse. It's getting out of control in Canada. And inflation is something that the left seems to not care. They couldn't care less about inflation, partially because they're not smart enough to understand it, but they couldn't care less about inflation. Here's my point. On one hand, they always argue their policies. Oh, we care so much about the poor, because we support, taxpayer-funded healthcare and massive amounts of welfare. We care about the poor. That means we care about the poor. But then they support these policies of that by default, um, make the price of everything, the price of everything inflation go, it makes everything go way up. And the problem, like I always say with inflation, is it hurts the poor the most, because the poor are people who, even a lot of middle class people, it's not just the poor. Like honestly, most of the population, they don't have tens of thousands of dollars laying around. Like they just don't, because things have gotten so expensive, because the cost of housing has gone up so much, basically mostly due to immigration, and BS government regulation. The cost of housing has gone way up, so people are barely getting by. Maybe they don't even have a house because they can't afford it, and things are so expensive. And getting back to the whole point here, inflation affects the poor the most, because the poor are people who, they don't have money laying around. Like most of them, if not all of them, probably the overwhelming, probably 80-90%, are living paycheck to paycheck, which means they're just getting by. And if the price of food goes up 5-10%, they might not be able to pay for that. So that maybe means that they maybe might not be able to eat for a meal or two out of the week, or maybe they got to keep their house at 2-3 degrees colder during the winter because the carbon tax. And it just goes to show the level of cognitive dissonance, the level of just tone deafness of the left. And the people that support this too, like I say, this is an easy way to tell if people have the ability to think critically. And that's something that the left just fundamentally doesn't understand, is that most people on the left tend to think that if you disagree with them in the slightest bit, it means you disagree with everything. It means if you disagree with, let's just take a bit of a good example. If you disagree with 3-year-old 4-year-old kids transitioning, or if you disagree with 10-year-old drag kids performing at strip clubs, if you disagree with that, then that must mean that you're against gay marriage. That must mean you're even against people being able to be gay. That must mean you want to throw people in jail for being gay. Like that's how they interpret everything. And they don't understand that you can disagree with the carbon tax but still agree with the concept of climate change being a big issue. I don't think it's an issue whatsoever, but you can. There is an in between. And that's the problem with the left, is that they know in the back of their head, there's no, I mean, at least most people, there's no way they're stupid enough to look the BC government's own numbers, which is a leftist government, so you can't argue their bias. They show that it doesn't do anything. Like, what more evidence could you get? The government's own numbers show it doesn't do anything. Like, there's no better evidence that I could possibly provide to them that would prove could disprove it. If I was brainstorming reasons, just off the top of my head, reasons for the carbon tax to not work, it would be a province, or even better, a country, but at the very least a province that has tried it and it hasn't made a difference. There's no better argument I could possibly come up with, and yet that's still not enough for them to change their mind. And it just goes to show just how biased people are. So basically, to sum it up, this just goes to show just how tone deaf the left and the liberals are, is that they don't care. The fact that they're supporting this kind of stuff just goes to show they don't care. The goal is to keep people poor. The goal is to keep people reliant on the government. And the reason why the average leftist doesn't have a problem with that, is that they want it too. They want people to be dependent on government. They want the government to have as much power as possible. They don't care that the carbon tax, makes the price of everything go up. Food, like I say, everything. Like people who run small businesses, electricians, plumbers, they got to get their stuff brought in by truck, which means they're going to charge you more, and they're going to charge you more, and people are going to be mad that, hey, why is your cost going up? Carbon tax. And not that people are too stupid to recognize they support the carbon tax, but yet they're mad at people because they're raising their prices. They think, oh, it's the greedy corporations, they just want to make more money. No, it's because you support stupid policies. Like, get your head out of your ass. It bothers me so much that people are, they're that tone deaf, they're that cognitive dissonance, this stupidity. And a lot of it is just the public schools, the universities, the mainstream media. I'm not saying that it's a lot of these people's fault. They've just fallen for the propaganda that the public schools, the universities, the mainstream media is so good at brainwashing people and misleading people that they don't know better. They don't know any better, and it's sad. And this is something that hurts people so much, because the carbon tax objectively probably costs people well into the hundreds, if not maybe even thousands of dollars. Like if you're a farmer, it definitely does. Um, but if you're someone who drives a lot, it definitely does. If you're someone who, maybe you have a big family and you gotta buy a lot of food, it definitely does. Imagine if you had that money to spend or to save even. Maybe all of a sudden, imagine if you could go, if you're someone living paycheck to paycheck, you could go from not living paycheck to paycheck to, maybe you'd be able to put away 200-300 bucks a month and retire 5 years earlier. Imagine how nice that would be. But no, we got to have a carbon tax that doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. And it just bothered, like I say, it bothers me so much. But I could talk for this forever, so I'm going to leave the video there. I've talked long enough. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. I do have my PayPal linked in the description. I do have an email address for e-transfer. But at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already.